Okay, guys, today I wanted to read Grandfather's Journey. It goes along with what we have been doing in social studies, and then it goes along with what I'm asking you to do for writing this week, which is to think about all of the moves that you've made. So, we talked about how some people have lived in the same home their entire life, um, but how some of us have moved to a new home in a new neighborhood or a new city or a new state or even a new country. How some of us have just moved schools. So we used to go to maybe Spring Mill or Nora or Crooked Creek or Allisonville, and now we go to Fox Hill. And some of us who have always been at Fox Hill, we definitely aren't still in kindergarten, so we've had a different classroom and a different teacher every year. So everybody has had different times in their lives when they have moved. And we think about, why do people move? Well, people move for a lot of different reasons. They move because there's a new opportunity. They move because there is some kind of challenge that they're facing, because maybe they're not making enough money at a job, so they need a new job. So that's a challenge. Maybe your parents don't get along anymore and they decided they didn't want to be together and they got a divorce. That's a challenge, and then somebody had to move. So there are a lot of times in which people have to move because of not so great things. There are times when people get new jobs and they get a new raise and now they're making more money and they can afford a new house. So that's a good reason to move. It's always a good reason to move to a different grade level, because it means you're getting smarter and smarter, and that's great. And if you were still in kindergarten, I wouldn't be your teacher, and that would be a huge bummer. So think about all of the different moves that you've made when you're working on your writing assignment today. This is one of the stories that I normally read during social studies during that unit, and then we talk about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this video, and then I'm going to put a discussion below so that we can talk about it. It's called Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say. My grandfather was a young man when he left his home in Japan and went to see the world. He wore European clothes for the first time and began his journey on a steamship. The Pacific Ocean astonished him. For 3 weeks he did not see land. When land finally appeared, it was the New World. He explored North America by train and riverboat and often walked for days on end. Deserts with rocks like enormous sculptures amazed him. The endless farm fields reminded him of the ocean he had crossed. Huge cities of factories and tall buildings bewildered and yet excited him. He marveled at the towering mountains and rivers as clear as the sky. He met many people along the way. He shook hands with black men and white men, with yellow men and red men. The more he traveled, the more he longed to see new places, and never thought of returning home. Of all the places he visited, he liked California best. He loved the strong sunlight there, the Sierra Mountains, the lovely seacoast. After a time, he returned to his village in Japan to marry his childhood sweetheart. Then they brought his bride to the new country. They made their home by the San Francisco Bay and had a baby girl. As his daughter grew, my grandfather began to think about his own childhood. He thought about his old friends. He remembered the mountains and rivers of his home. He surrounded himself with songbirds, but he could not forget. Finally, when his daughter was nearly grown, he could wait no more. He took his family and returned to his homeland. Once again, he saw the mountains and the rivers of his childhood. They were just as he remembered them. Once again, he exchanged stories and laughed with his old friends. But the village was not a place for a daughter from San Francisco, so my grandfather bought a house in a large city nearby. There, the young woman fell in love, married, and some time later, I was born. When I was a small boy, my favorite weekend was a visit to my grandfather's house. He told me many stories about California. He raised warbles and silver eyes, but he could not forget the mountains and rivers of California. So he planned a trip. But a war began. Bombs fell from the sky and scattered our lives like leaves in a storm. When the war ended, there was nothing left of the city and of the house where my grandparents had lived. So they returned to the village where they had been children, but my grandfather never kept another songbird. The last time I saw him, my grandfather said that he longed to see California one more time. He never did. And when I was nearly grown, I left home and went to see California for myself. After a time, I came to love the land my grandfather had loved, and I stayed on and on until I had a daughter of my own. But I also miss the mountains and rivers of my childhood. I miss my old friends, so I return now and then when I cannot still the longing of my heart. The funny thing is, the moment I am in one country, I am homesick for the other. I think I know my grandfather now. I miss him very much. So gosh, Miss F, why do you love that book if it's so sad? Well, you know me. I like stuff even when it's sad. And it's okay that it's sad because it's also a little bit happy. You've got the grandfather who gets to go and travel the world and see all these things that he never would have seen if he wasn't brave enough to leave home. And then you've got his family who loves him back home and all the places that he's used to. And what do you think, the main point of the author? What is he trying to say? He ends with that he understands his grandfather now because he understands what it's like to miss a place, but try to be another place, then miss that place, and go back and forth and back and forth. So I want you to think about what do you think they're trying to tell you, and have you ever felt that way? Okay, I look forward to reading our discussion below. Thanks.